The afternoon light in the Privy Council chamber was fading, casting long shadows across the centuries-old oak panels that had witnessed countless moments of British history. The atmosphere inside had been tense for weeks, with palace staff walking on eggshells around the Queen Consort. Camilla had always been known for her sharp tongue and impatience with bureaucracy, but lately something had shifted. Those close to the king noticed a new edge to her demeanor, and a shortness that seemed to grow with each passing day of royal obligations. The incident that would change everything began with a scheduling dispute. A senior palace official, Jonathan Hartley Smith, had been tasked with delivering what he knew would be unwelcome news. The king's physicians had recommended reducing his public engagements, which meant cutting several charities from the upcoming royal itinerary. And among them was a veterans organization that Camilla had personally championed for years. It was Hartley Smith's unfortunate duty to explain that the organization would have to wait until the next scheduling cycle, potentially 18 months away. He found Camilla in the small antechamber adjoining the main council room, reviewing papers at a writing desk. The king was already seated in the council chamber, waiting for the formal meeting to begin. Hartley Smith approached with the practiced deference of someone who had served the royal household for over 2 decades. "Your Majesty, I need to share some difficult news regarding the schedule," he began, keeping his voice low. Camilla looked up, her eyes already narrowing. "What now?" "The Veterans Charity event in Manchester. The physicians have advised against any travel north next month. We'll need to postpone." The words hung in the air for a moment, but Camilla set down her pen with deliberate slowness. "Postpone? You mean cancel?" "Only temporarily, ma'am. The king's health must come first." Camilla rose from her chair, and Hartley Smith instinctively took a half-step back. "Do you have any idea what that charity means to those men? To their families? They've been waiting for this visit for 2 years. I understand completely, ma'am, but no, Jonathan. I don't think you do understand." Her voice remained controlled, but there was a tremor in it. "Those men served this country. They lost limbs, they lost friends, they lost their futures. And now they're being told the king doesn't have time for them? Ma'am, it's not about time, it's about—" "Don't lecture me about what it's about." Camilla moved around the desk, stepping closer to him. "I've been doing this longer than you've been in this palace. I know exactly what it's about. It's about caution. It's about fear. It's about you and your committee of advisors deciding what's safe and what's not." Hartley Smith held his ground, though his face had grown pale. "With respect, ma'am, I'm following medical advice. If something happened to the king during a public engagement, the consequences— "The consequences for who? For you? For your career?" Camilla's voice rose. "Don't pretend this is about Charles. This is about covering yourselves, about making sure no one can blame you if something goes wrong." "That's not fair, ma'am." "Fair?" The word came out as something between a laugh and a scoff. "You want to talk about fair? I'll tell you what's not fair. What's not fair is promising hope to people who have nothing left, and then snatching it away because of a memo from some doctor who's never met a veteran in his life." The door to the council chamber stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, those inside could hear the rising tension, though the words remained indistinct. King Charles sat on his throne-like chair at the head of the long table, his face unreadable as he listened to the muffled argument from the next room. Hartley Smith tried a different approach. "Ma'am, perhaps we could arrange a video message. Something personal from you and His Majesty. It wouldn't be the same as a visit, but—" "A video message." Camilla's voice dripped with contempt. "You want me to send a video message to men who watched their friends die? Who held them as they bled out? Who still wake up screaming every night? You want me to look into a camera and say, 'Sorry, we can't be bothered to show up'?" "I'm only trying to find a solution, ma'am." "The solution is simple. You go back to whoever gave you this order, and you tell them that the Queen Consort will be in Manchester next month. with or without their permission. And if Charles can't come, I'll go alone. Hartley Smith shook his head. I'm afraid that's not possible, ma'am. The security assessment— Damn your security assessment. Ma'am, please. Don't tell me, please. Camilla stepped forward again, and now she was close enough that Hartley Smith could see the veins standing out in her neck. Don't you dare tell me, please. I have spent my entire adult life being told what I can and cannot do, being told I'm not good enough, being told I don't belong, being told to wait. To be patient, to understand. Well, I'm done understanding. Ma'am, I really think— I don't pay you to think. I pay you to do your job, and your job is to make things happen, not to explain why they can't. Hartley Smith's own composure finally cracked. With respect, ma'am, you don't pay me at all. The civil service pays me, and my job is to advise the Crown, not to obey every whim of— He never finished the sentence. Later, eyewitnesses would describe different versions of what happened next. Some said Camilla's hand connected with his cheek. Others said it was more of a push, a shove born of frustration rather than true violence. A few, loyal to the Queen Consort, would insist that she merely gestured forcefully and he stumbled backward on his own. But everyone agreed on one thing. There was contact, there was sound, and there was a moment of absolute frozen silence that followed. Hartley Smith stood motionless, his hand rising slowly to his face. The red mark where her palm had struck was already visible against his pale skin. His expression wasn't anger or shock or even pain. It was something worse, a kind of profound, exhausted sadness, as if he had always known it would come to this. Camilla herself seemed momentarily stunned by what she had done. Her hand remained half raised, fingers slightly curled, as if she didn't quite recognize it as her own. The anger that had driven her was gone, replaced by something that might have been horror or might have been denial. In the council chamber, King Charles heard the sound. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. The sharp crack of flesh striking flesh, followed by a silence so complete that the old building itself seemed to hold its breath. For a long moment, he didn't move. His hands rested on the arms of the throne, knuckles white. Those seated around the council table watched him, unsure what to do, unsure even what had happened. And then slowly, with the deliberation of a man who had spent his entire life learning to control his reactions, King Charles rose from his throne. He walked to the door and pushed it open. What he saw would stay with him for the rest of his life. His wife, the woman he had loved for over 50 years, the woman he had waited decades to marry, the woman he had crowned as his queen, standing in the middle of the antechamber with her hand still raised. And before her, a senior palace official, and his face marked with the evidence of what she had done. Camilla. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of decades. Come with me. She turned to look at him, and for a moment she was young again, the girl he had first met at a polo match, the woman who had laughed with him and loved him and stood by him through every scandal and every triumph. Then the moment passed, and she was simply a woman who had done something unforgivable. Charles, not now. He held up one hand, cutting her off. Jonathan, would you give us a moment? Hartley Smith nodded, his eyes still fixed on some middle distance, and walked slowly from the room. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Father and daughter, that's what they had sometimes called themselves, laughing at the joke. But there was nothing funny now. Charles looked at his wife, and she looked back at him, and between them lay 50 years of history and 5 seconds that threatened to undo it all. Tell me what happened, he said. And Camilla, for the first time in longer than she could remember, found she had no words at all. The king closed the door behind Hartley Smith and stood with his back against it, as if barring entry to the world outside. The antechamber suddenly felt smaller, the high ceilings and ornate moldings pressing down on the two figures at its center. Camilla had not moved from where she stood, her hand now lowered to her side, but still trembling slightly. Charles, I didn't mean—" She stopped, because she didn't know how to finish the sentence. Didn't mean to hit him, but she had. Didn't mean to lose control, but she had. Didn't mean for you to find out? That was perhaps the most honest answer, and the most damning. The king walked slowly to the window, his back to her. Outside, the grounds of the palace stretched toward the London evening, perfectly manicured lawns and precisely placed trees, everything ordered and controlled. Nothing like the chaos inside this room. "I have spent my entire life," he said quietly, "learning to control myself. Learning that every word I speak, every gesture I make, every expression that crosses my face will be watched and interpreted and judged. I learned it as a child, when my mother was already queen, and my father expected perfection. I learned it as a young man, when every relationship I had became front-page news. I learned it as a husband, when my marriage fell apart, in full view of the world. And I learned it as a father, when I had to watch my sons go through the same torment." He turned to face her. "And through all of that, you were the one person I could be myself with. The one person who didn't expect me to be the king, or the Prince of Wales, or any of the other titles. Just Charles. Just a man." Camilla's eyes glistened. "I know. I know what we've been through. What you've been through. What we've both been through." "Do you?" He took a step toward her. "Because what I just saw, that wasn't the woman I know. That wasn't the woman who waited for me, who believed in me, who never asked for anything except to be with me. That was someone else entirely. I'm under so much pressure, Charles. You don't understand. Don't understand?" His voice rose for the first time, then fell again. "I understand more than you think. I understand that every day people question whether you should be queen. I understand that there are still those who compare you to Diana, who will never accept you, who will never forgive either of us for what happened. I understand that the load you carry is heavy, and it gets heavier every year. Then how can you judge me for one moment of— I'm not judging you for the moment. I'm judging you for what comes after." He moved closer still, until they were only a few feet apart. "In a few minutes, Jonathan will walk out of this palace and go home to his wife and his children, and he will have to explain to them why his face is red, why he's shaking, why he looks like a man who's been attacked in his own workplace. And he will have to decide whether to tell them the truth, that the Queen of England struck him." Camilla flinched at the words. "Queen of England. You know I never asked for any of this." "No. You asked for me. Yeah, and I gave you everything else along with it." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had seen 1,000 times, always when he was struggling with something he couldn't solve. "What am I supposed to do, Camilla? What can I possibly do?" "You can stand by me, like you always have." "Stand by you? Against what? Against whom?" He gestured toward the door. "That man out there didn't attack you. He didn't insult you. He didn't do anything except his job. And you hit him." "I know." The words came out as barely a whisper. "I know what I did. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. But if this gets out, if anyone finds out, then we'll deal with it. Together." He said it automatically, the response of a lifetime, the instinct to protect her that had never faded. But even as he spoke, something in his eyes suggested doubt. "Together," she repeated, "like we've always done." "Yes." But the word hung in the air between them. And neither of them moved to embrace, neither of them reached for the other. The space that had always been filled with love and understanding and partnership now seemed vast and empty. Camilla looked down at her hand, the one that had struck Jonathan Hartley Smith. She flexed her fingers, as if testing whether they still belonged to her. I should apologize to him. Properly. Yes, you should. Will you come with me? Charles considered this for a long moment. No. This is something you need to do alone. She nodded slowly, accepting this judgment without argument. Then she looked up at him, and for a moment she was the Camilla he had always known, the one with the wry smile and the knowing eyes and the strength that had carried them both through so much. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. He had never said those words to her before, not in 50 years. There had always been a plan, always a way forward, always something to hold on to, and now there was only uncertainty. I honestly don't know. From the council chamber, they could hear the muffled sounds of advisors and officials trying to pretend they hadn't heard anything, trying to maintain the fiction of normalcy. But nothing would be normal again. The king had stood from his throne, and the world had shifted. Camilla walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. I love you, Charles. I hope you know that. Whatever else I am, whatever else I've done, I love you. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he loved her too, had always loved her, would probably always love her. But love, he was learning, was not always enough. The door opened and closed, and he was alone in the antechamber, with the fading light and the long shadows and the knowledge that everything had changed. Camilla found Jonathan Hartley Smith in a small office down the corridor, sitting in a chair with his head in his hands. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see his shoulders shaking slightly. She knocked softly, and he looked up quickly, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. May I come in? She asked. He stood immediately, centuries of protocol overriding personal pain. Of course, ma'am. His voice was rough but controlled. Please sit down. I'm not here to make this harder. She entered and closed the door behind her, then took the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither spoke. I don't know how to begin, she said finally. I don't know what words exist for something like this. Hartley Smith looked at his hands, folded in his lap. There's no protocol for it, ma'am. I've checked. The attempt at humor, however faint, broke something in the air between them. Camilla felt tears prick at her eyes. Jonathan, I am so sorry. There's no excuse for what I did. No justification, no explanation that makes it right. I was angry and frustrated, and I took it out on you, and that was unforgivable. He was quiet for a moment, processing her words. Ma'am? I've worked in this palace for 23 years. I've seen things that would surprise you. I've been shouted at by princes and ignored by queens, and treated like furniture by people whose names you wouldn't recognize. But no one has ever... He stopped, unable to finish. Hit you. You can say it. No one has ever hit you. He nodded. I've never done anything like that before. Not ever. Not in my whole life. She leaned forward, willing him to believe her. I don't know what happened. I don't know where that came from. But it wasn't you. It was me. It was all me. Hartley Smith looked up at her, and she saw in his eyes something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not fear, but understanding. Ma'am, I know what you've been dealing with. I know about the pressure, the scrutiny, the constant criticism. I see it every day. I see what it does to you and to His Majesty, and to everyone in this family. That doesn't excuse... No, it doesn't excuse anything. But it explains something. He sat back in his chair, and some of the tension left his shoulders. I've been in meetings where people said terrible things about you. where they questioned your right to be here, your motives, your character. I've heard things that would make anyone angry, and I've watched you smile through it all, day after day, year after year. You think that's why I think everyone has a breaking point. I think you reached yours today. He paused. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying there aren't consequences, but I understand. And that matters, at least to me. Camilla sat back, stunned by his generosity. You're a better person than I am, Jonathan? Than most people are. I'm not better. I'm just not in your position. He managed a small smile. If I had to face what you face every day, I might have snapped years ago. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of what had happened slowly shifting into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement, recognition that they were both human, both flawed, both doing their best in impossible circumstances. What happens now? Camilla asked. What do you need from me? Hartley Smith considered this carefully. I need you to know that I won't speak of this to anyone. Not my colleagues, not the press, not even my wife. As far as the world is concerned, this never happened. Why would you do that? After what I did to you? Because I serve the crown. Because I believe in what this family represents, even when individual members fall short. Because the alternative, scandal, humiliation, damage to the monarchy, would hurt millions of people who look to you for leadership and inspiration. He met her eyes. And because I think this was a moment of weakness, not who you truly are. Camilla felt tears spill down her cheeks. I don't deserve your loyalty. With respect, ma'am, that's not for you to decide. He reached into his pocket and produced a clean handkerchief, offering it to her. What I do need from you is something else entirely. Anything. Tell me. I need you to remember this moment. I need you to carry it with you, always. Not as punishment, but as reminder. Reminder of what happens when the pressure becomes too much. A reminder that you're human, like the rest of us. Reminder that the people around you, all of us, are trying our best, even when we get it wrong. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I will. I promise. And I need you to be kind to yourself. This surprised her, and he saw it in her expression. What I mean is, don't let this define you. You made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But you're still the queen, and you're still the woman who's done more for veterans and victims of domestic violence than anyone in public life. You're still the person who stood by the king through everything, who helped him become the man he is today. That matters. That still matters. Camilla looked at him. This man she had struck less than an hour ago and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Genuine humility. Jonathan, if there's ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, you only have to ask. He smiled, but a real smile this time. There is one thing, ma'am. Name it. The next time you're angry about a scheduling decision, just yell at me. I have very thick skin. I've been yelled at by the best. His eyes twinkled. But maybe skip the physical contact. She laughed, and it was the most surprising sound in the world. Deal, I promise. They stood simultaneously, and for an awkward moment, neither knew what to do. Then Camilla extended her hand, and Hartley Smith took it. And they shook like two people meeting for the first time. Thank you, she said, for everything. Thank you, ma'am, for listening, for apologizing, for being human. She left the office and walked back toward the council chamber, her steps lighter than they had been in months. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more pressure, more moments when she wanted to scream or strike out. But she also knew now that she was stronger than that, or could be if she chose. The king was waiting for her in the corridor, his expression anxious. When he saw her face, some of the tension left his own. It's done, she said. He's not going to say anything? Charles closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing over him. Thank God. But that's not the important part. She took his hands in hers. The important part is that I learned something today. About myself. About what I'm capable of, both good and bad. And I'm going to do better. I promise you. I'm going to do better. He looked at her, this woman he had loved for so long, and saw something new in her eyes. Not the defiance that had always been there, not the strength that had carried her through decades of criticism, but something softer, something like wisdom. I believe you, he said, and he meant it. They walked back into the council chamber together, and the advisors who had been waiting nervously relaxed slightly at the sight of them. Whatever had happened in that antechamber, it was over now. The king and queen were united, and that was what mattered. But as the meeting resumed and the business of government continued, both of them carried the weight of what had occurred, and both of them knew that some things, once done, could never be undone. The only choice was to move forward, to learn, to grow, to be better. The weeks that followed were among the most difficult of Camilla's life. Not because of external pressure, Hartley Smith kept his promise, and no word of the incident leaked to the press, but because of internal ones. She couldn't look at herself in the mirror without remembering what she had done. She couldn't pass Jonathan in the corridor without a flush of shame. She couldn't lie next to Charles at night without wondering if he looked at her differently now. He did, of course. They both pretended otherwise, but the change was real and undeniable. Not in his love, that remained constant, as it always had, but in something else. Trust, perhaps, or the easy intimacy that comes from believing you know everything about another person. He now knew that she was capable of violence, and that knowledge sat between them like an unwelcome guest. Camilla threw herself into her work with renewed determination. She visited more charities, made more speeches, shook more hands. She was determined to prove, to herself, to Charles, to the world, that she was more than that one moment of weakness, that she was the queen they deserved. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. It started with small things. A newspaper column questioning her fashion choices, a social media post comparing her unfavorably to Diana, a late-night talk show joke about her age, nothing she hadn't weathered before, but somehow it all felt sharper now, more personal, as if the world could sense her vulnerability and was circling like a predator. Then came the hecklers. And the first incident was at a veterans event in Manchester, the very event that had sparked the confrontation with Hartley Smith. Camilla was speaking to a group of elderly soldiers when a man in the back shouted, "Where were you when Diana needed you?" The room went silent. Security moved toward the man, but Camilla held up her hand. "I think about that question every day," she said quietly. "Every single day. And I don't have an answer that will satisfy anyone, including myself. But I'm here now, with you, and that's where I want to be." The crowd applauded, and the moment passed. But Camilla felt the wound reopen. The second incident was worse. She was leaving a church service in London when a woman pushed through the crowd and spat at her feet. "Murderer!" the woman screamed, before being dragged away by police. The word echoed in Camilla's ears for days. Murderer. As if she had killed Diana with her own hands. As if the car crash in Paris had been her doing. And Charles held her that night as she sobbed. "They don't know you," he whispered. "They don't know anything about you." "But what if they're right?" Camilla asked. "What if I am everything